Hey class, I'm going to go over like maybe the first 6 right here, and you can watch as I walk through these. Take it number 1. Now remember just our basic steps. We want to isolate the variable in the end, but first we need to isolate the variable term. So get rid of everything except for the variable term, and then we can isolate the variable. So let's just take it one step at a time. Remember, don't look at this and try to solve it in your head first and then do something to make it fit. You're not doing that. You're just taking this one step at a time, just like we saw in that detective thing where we're going backwards through the problem one step at a time, and we're writing everything down. And it's going to look like this. So let's think here for number 1 right here. 5x is our variable term. What is the first step in isolating the variable term? That means we need to get rid of adding 9. So you have to ask yourself, what do we do to undo adding 9? We want to go in the reverse order. So we want to subtract 9. So you're going to write this on your paper. I mean, literally on your paper, write -9 on both sides of the equation. On both sides, we're doing something, and then we're going to write the answer down below. So the answer, put our equal sign. On the left-hand side, the answer is going to be 5x. That's what's left over after we subtract 9. And on the right-hand side, we have 27. Now, the next step, we want to isolate x, so we want to undo this math operation that's happening with x. What is that math operation? What does it mean when a 5 is next to an x? 5 times x. We want to undo multiplying by 5. So we're going to show dividing by 5. Divide by 5 on both sides, and write your solution. And there you have your solution. So x is 5 2/7. If you did it by a calculator, it probably took you longer because this is not hard to do right here, but you would get 5.4. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Same thing, we're going to take a couple of steps to get c by itself. We want to get rid of positive 9. How do we undo, or how do we get rid of positive 9? Now, this subtraction sign, look, we're not subtracting 9. So you don't want to add 9. That means you're going to have 18 over here. You want to make this 9 right here a 0. So we have to subtract 9. Remember, once again, we're not subtracting 9 from c. This is not c minus 9. This is 9 minus c. So we're just looking at this positive 9 and thinking, what do I do to get rid of a positive 9? So we're subtracting 9 on both sides. And our solution we write under here. Now what's left over after I get rid of the 9? The minus sign becomes a negative sign. So it's negative c. Now we have one more step right here because we don't want to know what negative c equals. We want to know what positive c equals. So we're going to do one more thing, which is to multiply by -1. So multiply by -1 times -1 here, and all that does is change our sign. So here we have c equals 22. We can put 22 up here and see that this makes sense. 9 minus 22 is -13. That makes sense. Let's do number 3 right here. How do we get rid of multiplying by 2/3? There's a couple of things you could do. You can do the fast, easy way is multiply by the reciprocal. If you remember our warm-up that we did the other day, how do what do you multiply a fraction by to equal 1? Multiply by the reciprocal. And so now it's 1x, right? That's the fastest, easiest way. So you can just multiply by the reciprocal. Now, if you thought, well, let's just divide by 2/3. Well, you're exactly right. You can divide by 2/3. But 6 divided by 2/3 is the same as 6 times 3/2. So you still are multiplying by the reciprocal. And let's go ahead and write our what's left over. This becomes 1, and it's 1x. And then here you multiply that out, 6 times 3 divided by 2, and you get 9. That's our solution right there. Let's take a look at number 4 right here, and just kind of scroll up. Okay, so I see 9p. This is kind of like number 1, very similar in the way they look right here. So I want to keep 9p, and I want to isolate that, but I want to get rid of adding 11, so it should look like this. There's our first step right here, subtracting 11 from both sides. And now to isolate 9, we're going to isolate the variable, we're going to divide by 9. And here's our solution. You should come up here and substitute the variable for negative 2 right here. So 9 times negative 2, that's negative 18. And negative 18 plus positive 11 is negative 7. And yes, you checked it, it's correct. Let's do number 5 right here. Let me go ahead and go through our first step. So here our first step was to get rid of the positive 3 right here by subtracting 3 on both sides. Now 2.5 times some number is 30. So we want to, in this case, divide by 2.5. Or you can multiply by the reciprocal as well. So either way, you could say I'm going to divide by 2.5, or you can change that to a fraction and just multiply by the reciprocal, which is what we have to do anyway, right? Because 30 divided by 2.5 is 30 divided by 5 halves. We're going to have to change it, erase it. So we're going to have to end up multiplying by the reciprocal anyway. And so 60 divided by 5. And our solution is 12 right here. So we can check that. 12 times 2.5 is 30, and 30 plus 3 is 33. All right, the last one I want to show you right now is number 6. Doing number 6 will also help you with number 7. These two I kind of made a little bit tougher than all the others because there's more steps. You have to do some simplifying first. You have to do a little bit of a distributive property, and then you can start solving. So first simplify, first use distributive property, and then we're going to worry about solving it later. So let's do this first. That's our first step in the distributive property. Notice that I continued to copy every single thing down. I did one thing here. I wrote 12c minus 15, but I copied down the rest of it because I need to see the whole thing, not do it all in my head, and then sometimes we make mistakes doing that. So let's combine our like terms. We have here a negative 15, negative 15 plus 4. Hold on a second. So we end up with 12c plus negative 11. Remember, we changed this to adding a negative 15, so we can kind of, it's not as confusing. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it makes it less confusing. So we're combining negative 15 and a positive 4 to get negative 11. So really it's 12c plus a negative 11, or 12c minus 11, a positive 11, to equal 61. Now we're ready to solve our problem. So now we're ready to start taking steps. I'm running out of room right here, so I'm going to erase and move. All right, here we go. Now let's follow our steps. And there you have it. So our solution is 6. We can check that by putting 6 up here for the 4. And you can kind of follow along with the calculator to double check you get the right answer. 4 times 6 is 24, and 24 minus 5 is 19. Multiply 19 times 3 is 57, and 57 plus 4 is 61. So yes, we double checked it, and C is definitely 6. All right, so those are your basic steps through solving these problems. When you go to these other problems, you'll notice down on number 10 and 11 here, think, what's the first thing I would do if I knew, look at number 11, if I knew what y was, let's make up a number like 5, okay? If I knew what 5 was and I didn't know the answer, what would the first thing I do to evaluate this? First, I would add 18, and then I'd get my answer and divide by 10. So when we're solving, we're being that detective who has to walk backwards. You have to undo in reverse order. So the first thing you would do to solve and isolate y is to multiply by 10. Because the last thing you did was dividing by 10. So now we have to undo dividing by 10 here. We multiply by 10 here, multiply by 10 here, get your answers. Make sure you're using all your rules for multiplying positive and negative numbers. and so forth, okay? I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that, and then we'll go over the rest of these on our next class period. Thank you.